Good morning, hello coders. Today we're going to be working through or continuing on the FreeCodeCamp course that I'm building. It's a PHP OOP project. It's an invoicing application, and we're doing it without any libraries apart from testing libraries, and we're building the whole framework behind it, so the routing and the ORM and so forth. And we've been working our way through the routing process. So we've created a request object, a series of routes, and we've also created a locator that we did in the last stream. The locator will locate the right route based on the request that is given. Now, we ended the last stream yesterday with all the unit tests working. We have some acceptance tests that aren't working. We're going to have a look at those today. We've managed to get those routes actually being validated, being used. There is, however, a lot of things that I still need to do around the routes. I need to clear up. I need to tidy up and cleanse the user requests coming through. I also need to sort out the parameters that are coming through as well. I'll just demonstrate. If we go back into the code here, excuse me, if we go to the, where was it? It was in helper, HTTP. So we have this locator class here, but what I would like to do, excuse me, what I would like to do is with the routes where we're putting in the particular routes which are up here, routing.php, I would like to validate and cleanse the user input. So this is the ID of the invoice that we're passing through, and obviously I need to make sure that that is valid. So that's something that we need to do. There's other bits and pieces, other tidying up processes that we need to do as well. But what we created yesterday was this locator where it does a preg match against the routes that we would like to check and the query string. So we generate the pattern, we compare that, or we check that using regex against the query string, and then we also put in matches. Now we're not doing anything with matches, so that's another thing that we need to do, because they would be the parameters that the route holds. But today, what I would like to do, so I just wanted to mention that because I know that needs to happen. But what I would like to do today is I would like to sort out the acceptance tests, because whenever you write tests, it's always good to keep them working. Right, the longer you have a test that doesn't work, the staler the code becomes, or the staler the tests become, and then the pointless and irrelevant those tests also become. So if I ran the unit tests first, hopefully the unit tests will pass. But if I did let's go up on the keyboard, might be able to have it in here. Yep. If I run the unit, they should all pass. So we have 35 unit tests that are passing. However, if I ran the acceptance test, so if I took away unit, and we're using Codeception here as a testing mechanism, you can see that we have 4 tests and all 4 had failed. Now these tests are ones we did I think last week, and we haven't actually looked at them and fixed them. So that's what I want to do today. I would like to get this thing into a place where all the tests are passing. Because if there is a test that is failing, that means that that's code that I need to fix. So I'm just going to review these this morning. So we're going to go this way, and we're going to go into tests and have a look at these things. So we have the default response test that is looking for that string whenever we land on this page. Okay, and then with the invoice test, we are checking these various things, and we're checking that string is also on that page, so I can see. Okay, and then we're checking that there is a page not found. Okay, so these tests are failing. There's also another not found page thing here, but these tests are failing because what we haven't done is we haven't wired up in the kernel here. So if we go into kernel, into Bootstrap, We haven't actually wired anything up here. So we're checking whether or not the routes are valid. So we're running the validation routines. This is something we did a few days ago, and so all of that is working because we've got the unit tests to back that up. But this isn't actually coming off and displaying a page. If we went back to what we had before, say I think it was in public, in the index, we had various things that were displaying the page. So view data view and so forth. So do something that gets the view from the controller. So let's see if we can wire that up and make that working. What we had before, I believe, in routes in the mapping class, we had this mechanism here. I think it was in run here, that parsed the URL off of the current URI and then looped over the routes and did all of these things. Did a check, then did a preg, and then got the controller, and then I think down here we did this horrible controller route get method type affair. So that's what we did, and we went through the stages of refactoring this, and I built this out into individual classes. So we're now at this stage. So this is what we're trying to attempt to do. Okay. And then hopefully what I'll do is I'll remove mapper and processor and all the other dead pieces of code. So if we go back to the kernel, helper kernel, go into the Bootstrap, we have is valid, that's fine. We have routes, routing factory, make routes, that's good. We need to create ourselves a request object, so I need to do request is equal to new request. Whoops, hang on, what's going on here? That's request test. Request, there we go, I think, yep. And let's bring that namespace back to what it should do. Let's put that up here. So use all of those things. I like to keep my imports nice and clean. So, whoops, new request. And the request, what does that take? It doesn't take, it takes a query string and it takes a method. So let's have a look at that request class a minute just to refresh my memory. Yep, it takes two strings, a method and a query string. That's fine. But I think we could probably do something better than that. Let's have a think. So what I would like to do, sorry, going backwards and forwards here, is I would like to pass in the server well, the request method is this one. That's the second parameter, and the first parameter would be this one, which would be query string. If I can get this to type out correctly. Oh, I'm missing a comma. There we go. Query. Oh, it's not, sorry, beg your pardon. It's server query string. So that's what we would put through. So we get the query string and we get the request method. So that would generate the new request. I'm just wondering if we could just put in $server and then deal with that from here. Okay, let's leave it at the moment. We might be able to refactor that later. There's no need to refactor it right now. So we have the request object. Now what we need to do is we need to actually play with the locator. So the locator is in HTTP locator here, and so we instantiate the locator, we pass in the request, and we pass in the array of routes. So down in the Bootstrap, now I know that this is not a Bootstrap anymore, this is something completely different, but let's just work with it for now. So let's do locator is equal to new locator. Or is it? Let me just double check a minute. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. This looks like this to me feels a little bit more static than a route match. Okay, no, let's just continue on. Let's continue on as it is. I can change all of these things later. So we do locator is equal to new locator, and it is this one here. Again, I'm going to just tidy up my namespaces, bung them up here. I think there is a PHP Storm way of reformatting the code so it does it automatically and tidies up the namespaces. So this one requires a request, so we're going to put in the request. This is now demonstrating dependency injection because a locator depends upon the locator. It also depends upon the routes that we've made here. So we're going to do routes, make routes like that. Let me just see what happens when we run make routes. This is adding the route, that then generates the route, add route, and then so forth. And then, yeah, all right. And then we have this commented out process method. I'm not too sure what that was about, but it's dead code, so let's remove it because it's not doing anything. That's dead code too. Okay, so then we have the locator, and we're running locate, which returns a route. So we go Bootstrap, so we go route is equal to locator locate, and that will return the route, hopefully, or null, that has matched the query string, and we also need to match the request method, which we aren't checking yet, so I need to add in that test. But these will all come out in the wash when we do some acceptance tests, so just throw in various things left and right. We'll probably end up having to refactor this quite a bit at some point. So we've got this route locate, so we need to do a check to make sure that the actual route is an instance of route. And again, I'm going to tidy those up. Okay, so if, well, let's say if false for a start, because if that isn't the case, then what we need to do is we need to throw a new exception, and this is going to be cannot find page, and it's going to be a 404. If the route can't be found, then we throw that exception. Okay, so at this point we now have the route and we can do something with that. So let's have a little look and see. Let's go to, let's have a look at the, I think it was the processor, wasn't it? Somewhere in the old code, in the mapper. So this is this is finding the controller name off of the root, controller name root get controller. Then we're instantiating that controller, and then we're getting the roots. Okay. Okie dokie. Bear with me just a second. Okay. Let's go back on that. Sorry, I'm just having a look at something just pinged up on the screen. Okay, let's have another play with this. So in the Bootstrap, the way to get the controller is to do, we can do controller name is equal to root get controller, and then view, or action, I should say, is equal to root get action. Okay, so that's now the controller and the method. So we can do something like, going back to the mapper again, just to refresh my memory. So that's what we do. So we return, we instantiate a new controller, and then we do that. Okay, so we could do new controller name, and then it is let's take these out of here. Go back to the Bootstrap. I'm just trying to remember. Oh yeah, I did it like that, didn't I? So we're just going to put in that that for now. I know it doesn't look great, but we just need something to work on at the moment, and then I'll do another round of refactoring once I'm happy. So let's just put that in as reference. So controller is new controller name, and then it's root get methods, but it should actually be root get action. So that can be put in there like so. So that can be removed. And I think in the mapping class, what we did is we returned that. So I can return this. But what I'm thinking of doing, this is actually getting quite ginormous, because it's doing an awful lot of stuff here. And actually, this isn't really technically well, it is a bootstrap because we are strapping things together, I guess. But it's moving away a little bit from that to other bits and pieces. And also, I think that the kernel class here, or the kernel, needs to take some responsibility as well. So what I would like to do is this mechanism here, where we're actually dealing with the root and so forth. I would like to create a class in kernel where we can boot that. First of all, though, let's just go and run some tests just to make sure that these units are still working, because there was a bit of code change there, and I very much doubt these are going to fly. Yeah, no, that's fine. So that's good. So I haven't broken anything, at least. So what I would like to do is I would like to just check a couple of things, how things are wired up. So we go to first of all, we go to the index page, and the index page does all a bunch of this, and it loads the kernel. And the kernel, which is here, loads the Bootstrap. Well, loads the autoloader, and then it loads the Bootstrap. Okay. I see. I'm not sure. I'm not overly happy with that process, because what I would like is I would like to have a kernel class called. Let's just bung some code in. So class kernel. And I would like to have a public static function called boot. Whoops. That needs to be a function, obviously. And what I would like to do is, let's tidy that up. What I would like to do is the mechanics in here. I would like to grab this. Whoops. So with the Bootstrap deals with the bootstrapping. It deals with building the validation and so forth, and instantiating the root factory, and does a bit of validation and stuff. But the mechanics of actually getting the particular kernel, the particular controller and the view based off of the root, this stuff I would like. Let's just grab that. I would like to do all of that in this boot mechanism. So we have, and then what we can do is we return that. So we have the request that's coming through. Because it's a global variable, we don't have to necessarily worry about passing that through into the boot, but we obviously need to pass in the roots and so forth. How are we going to do that? Well, in the Bootstrap, the roots are built through this root factory make roots. So, excuse me. So what I could do is I could let's remove those. Don't need those. Okay, so we're getting the rooting, passing that through. We're generating the roots. I think we need to have, I think this needs to call upon something needs to call upon the kernel boot. And I think it needs to be the index page. So I think it needs to be here. I think we need to do kernel boot. And that, I think, and the kernel boot will throw the exception if it's a 404, if the page can't be found. So I'm just kind of thinking out loud here how the best way of dealing with this. So this goes to kernel, requiring the kernel. The kernel then requires the bootstrap. Maybe we need to put the bootstrap up in here rather than in the kernel. Let's tidy that up. So let's take all of this and put that into the index. So we obviously need to fix the paths for all of these things. So we load the bootstrap. That is requiring something off of the kernel. What was I doing there? On the kernel. Yeah, I wasn't actually... Oh yeah, we were returning that. Okay, that's fine. Let's remove all of those things. That's dead code. And let's go back to the index here and tidy this up a little bit. So we need to get the routing file from the Bootstrap. There we go. That's what we need to do. So in Bootstrap, we were getting the root data. That's what we were doing here, getting the root data. So at that point, the root data gets built, gets returned from app routing. We then validate it and all of this stuff. We then make the routes and we do the validation. So what we could do is we could return. Well, first of all, we do if is valid, because that makes sure that that is a valid set of routes. We then return routes, like so. And well, let's do if not valid, then what we do is we throw an exception. Let's just double check. Are we throwing exceptions in here? Yeah, we are throwing exceptions. Okay, that's fine. That's no problem. So that's fine. We don't need to check if it is valid or not. We just run that because that validates and does the exception throwing. Okay, so Bootstrap is now just returning the routes. That's fine. And the way this is working now is that on index, we requiring the configuration, and the configuration file is, where is that? Where is that now? That is in kernel, and I don't like the way that is in kernel. I think that needs to be in config. So let's copy that, put that into here. So let's remove, let's remove that file. And config deals with the base paths and all that other jazz, configuration and stuff. So we pass the document root, which is the public, and then we deal with that. So it doesn't matter where this config is. It's nice to have it in a place called config rather than in kernel, because that didn't make any sense. So we load that from it is config. Let's have a look and make sure that that is correct. We're in public, and that needs to go into app config. Okay, cool. And then we load the base, and then we load the vendor, and then we load, or the autoloader, and then we load the Bootstrap. The Bootstrap is in the kernel. Now I'm thinking the Bootstrap needs to go somewhere else. It might even have to go, well, no, let's keep it in there for now. Let's just keep it in there for now. So we have the base path. Then we go to, well, let's just double check. We could create another definition, couldn't we? Base path, and we could do kernel path. Kernel path, and the base part, it's that which goes to public, but it's actually src. Does that come back with a, what's that? Yeah, src. Then it's so this might come up with some errors because I'm doing this src, and then helper, and then kernel. So that's the kernel path based on the base path. Could we even do base path just to keep this all? There we go. So I just changed the base path, and then the whole thing changes. That's fine. So that's chained. Okay, so now in the index we require the kernel. Why is that not coming through? Config, define on index. There we go. So it's the kernel path, and I just want to make sure that that has a trailing slash. There we go. And then Bootstrap. Okay, so that's now wired up. So now we can do the, what's the view data? What's all that about? The view data. Is that the routes that I'm returning from the Bootstrap? Let's have a look. Yeah, it is. So that would be routes. So we don't need to do that anymore. Well, let's just remove this dead code because this is not making much sense. Okay, then we do the boot, and the boot handles the mechanism, but we need to pass in the routes, which is an array of routes. Yeah. So we pass that routes into here. There we go. So we now have a response. From the booted kernel. I'm not a fan of supplying the routes into boot. I would rather just have boot nice and clean, but we will refactor it at some point, I'm sure. Let me just take a slurp of my tea. Okay, let's just run some unit tests just for sanity. I know I haven't changed any of the internal code here, but I just want to, it's always good just to make sure the tests are still running, just in case I have massacred anything in the code. Okay, so I've just refreshed the page, and you can see it here. We have this kernel class can't be found, so we need to deal with that. This is because I think when we're in the index page, let's go back to the code. When we go back to the index page here, we're trying to load up kernel, and kernel is in helper kernel. I think Bootstrap needs to live in app, right? But let's just, we're getting too ahead of ourselves. So we are loading the vendor autoloader. It's because it doesn't have any. It's because it doesn't have any. Namespaces. That's probably why, isn't it? It doesn't have a namespace. Gosh, I can't believe I worked that one out. It's only 4 minutes past 8 a.m. Surprising what a slurp of tea can do. So in kernel here, we need to put in the namespace. Let's just bring that out so you can see it. And the namespace is HTTP. No, it's not. It is. Let me just double check. Go back. Come on, PHP Storm. Let me bring that back. So yeah, it's kernel. Index. Now we should be able to do kernel. There we go. And then again, I'm going to tidy this up. So we're going to just grab the U and we're going to use that. We don't need to have the fully qualified name. There we go. Okay. Okay. The next error is that we have the exception can't be found, uncaught kernel exception can't be found. This is because I haven't worked through the exceptions, or at least I haven't namespaced those exceptions. The exceptions are just PHP standard exceptions. However, I could, I suppose, at some point create my own, but they still need to be namespaced, or they still need to be imported like that. And I think there's a couple. So there's that one, and I think, if I remember rightly, in the actual kernel themselves, there's that one, and then there is, where's the validation? Here we go. There. So let's just double check and see if I have used that. Okay, cool. The next error, let's go back to the browser, is that we can't find the page. So this is actually throwing the exception, the correct exception, which is cool, because this is saying can't find page. So this is actually throwing the 404 off of the boot. Which is good, because this is proving that the mechanism is slowly working. So let's go back to here. So cannot find page is the exception that I threw. It's not the validator. So we know that everything is nice and validated, but it's here. So it cannot find page, and it's 404. Okay. So we've got this to this point. So what we're doing is we're saying that the root isn't an instance of root. So something has gone bang in the locate, and the path that I was just putting through was just a blank thing. So let me just try and do invoice 1, 2, 3. No, that's going to fail as well. Okay, so let's see. Let's work this through. So we start right at the top. We go to the routing.php file here. These are the routes that are allowed. So we have / and we can do invoice, and we can do invoice edit. So these are the things that should be working, and they're not. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some, really what I would normally do is I would run xdebug and then do some debugging and step through all of this code. But we haven't got xdebug running against this box yet, so I can't do that. So the next best thing then is to just have a look at what each of these lines are actually doing. So on line 13, we're dealing with the request, the query string. So the first thing we need to do is just double check that that is actually the required bits and pieces. And we're going to just quickly do a quick var dump, and I prefer var dumps over print Rs, because with var dumps you can actually see the data type that these values have. So we're going to do var dump query string, and we're also going to do var dump request method here, and then we're just going to die and kill this out. So I'm just going to refresh the old page here, and we can see straight away what the error could be if I go back to the browser. So this is running a get, so that's the second parameter, but you can see here that we have a query string of nothing at all, which is a problem, because the actual test that I'm running here is /invoice /123. So that actually needs to be set. So maybe I'm using the wrong thing. Maybe that's not right. is it request URI? Let's have a little look and see. Nope, the request URI isn't working either. That's weird. Oh, hang on, I put it in the wrong one. Ah, yeah, so the request URI needed to be that, not the query string. So let's just remove these at the moment. Actually, I'll just show you. I'll prove it to you. So let's go to the browser. This is the path that was in, and then this is the request method. So let's go back to the code here. Okay. And I just want to double check. Let's just go back. Sorry, I just want to double check something for my sanity. I just want to check the browser and just make sure that that is, yeah. So if I go back to the browser, this is just going to the home page, and we have the slash here, so that's good. And if I went back to here and I deleted this lot, and then, sorry, so what I've done here is I've deleted the var dumps and went back to the browser. So I'm going back and forth here, refresh the page, then we get a blank screen, which is what we're after. We're not after any exceptions. Exceptions are bad in terms of this stream. So we go back to the code, and we're now passing all of this stuff. What I need to do, I suppose, is I do need to put this in a try catch at some point, just to catch everything out, maybe. But again, I'm thinking a bit too far ahead. Let's do controller root get action. That's fine, and that's returned. So in index at this point, we now have the response. And if I went back to the kernel, not the kernel, sorry. If I went back to the root mapper, that is now where we're at. Okay, so we've now dealt with this class, this mess of responsibilities. We've dealt with that, and I think that also means that the processor can go, because I think it's a similar thing, which is awesome. But what I need to do is I need to, before I go ahead and actually get my axe out and remove those classes, those dead pieces of wood, let's... Oh, my magic mouse is going crazy this morning. Why can't you go up? There we go. Go up. Okay, it's not liking me. There we go. So what I would like to do is I would like to just go back to the kernel. So that's returning. Let's put in a space here. It's always good to have spaces before your return statements, just to make things a little clearer. In the Bootstrap, we're returning routes. That's fine. In the index page, why can't you go up? There we go, index. We get the response. So let's just have a look. Let's just see what the response is. So var dump response. And in the response, if I go back to the browser, we can see that the browser is actually doing, is actually passing the view, and then that's views, and then home.php, which is awesome, because that is the view that we would like to render. So let's go back to the code here, and if it will let me, let's do require once, and it is response, and it is views, like that. So that's going to go to views/home, which, let me see, where is that in the grand scheme of things? That would be in controller type, right? Okay. Why won't it let me go up? That's so... What's wrong, PHP Storm? It's not allowing me to go up. Okay, it's having a bit of a glitchy time. I think the views, from memory, are within... It's having a right mare. Won't allow me to go up past SRC. How weird. Okay, from memory, I think the views are against the base path. So let's try that. Base path, and then response, and then views. So yes, I'm aware this is a dynamic expression, and I'm aware PHP Storm doesn't know how to deal with that. Okay, that's an interesting one there. That's an interesting error. So fail to open stream success in index.php. Okay, that's a bit weird. Okay, if PHP Storm is not allowing me to see those files, let's just take it into our own hand and go into the good old command line. So, excuse me. So we have a Dockerfile, README file, blah, blah, blah. We're an app, public here. So is it in public? ls of public. Yes, it is in public, and the base path goes to public 2. So let's do an ls of views. Oh, sorry, I need to cd into that, don't I? Well, let's just do ls of public and then views. So we have home, invoice, list, and then we have templates. And the one we were looking at, I think, was home. Let's just check that out. var dump, I can't remember. Ah, I see what's going on here. I've added an S. I've added an S. And I see the next issue because this is now not the base path. This is coming out of public, which is not what we need. So I need to go up into the config and I need to add some more configuration. So we've got base path, we've got kernel path, and we're also going to add public path as well. And public path is the document route, essentially. That's what it is. So that's so annoying. I can't get to the index page because it's refusing to open. Let's see if I can close this and then let's open up that. Nope, that's gone. That's that. Come on, PHP Storm. Restore default layout. Nope. I need to find the project window. I've just closed it. View, what's in view? Tool, windows, project. There we go. Can I go up and down? Yes, I can. Woo! Okay, good. I should have done that before. I apologize. So this now needs to be public path rather than base path. And it also needs to have, if I can go back to the config, if you're going to allow me to do that, we need to do a /. It should really be DRI, but you know. And bish bosh bash, we now have the home page. which I believe if we ran excuse me, if we ran the acceptance tests, well, let's run the unit test first, just to make sure everything of those are working. But if we ran the acceptance test, I think we had 4 failures last time, and we have 2 failures this time. So there we go. We are slowly building up that chain. So what is going on here? So what's the errors? So the last 2 errors that we can deal with. So we're testing the response code. Well, the first one here is we're testing the response code for invoice. We want to see the response code is 404. We are expecting a 404. It's not found, but we get a 200 OK. What was that for? Can we see down here? See response blah, 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 edit. That is apparently coming out as a 200 OK. Let's copy that and have a little look. Okay, that's interesting because that's actually returning a exception here. Cannot find page. So I'm not sure why PHP Storm or why Codeception was actually returning a 200 OK. Okay, that's a bit strange. And what's the next one? That is testing the response code for the invoice. We're expecting we are expecting another 404, but the actual is 200 OK. That's a bit strange as well. Let's check that too. Sorry, I should have showed you. This is what I'm looking at here, the second error. So let's go back to here and type in not found, and that should also throw us an exception, which it does. However, the exceptions aren't actually getting pushed through, or at least the status codes aren't, which is a bit peculiar because we're seeing everything as a 200 OK. Let's have a look. So we can remove that dead code. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove in helper HTTP routes. We can remove this dead code because this doesn't work anymore. The mapper and the processor, they are dealt with. Goodbye. Where is the delete? There we go. Boom. So they're gone, which is groovy. But we've still got this issue here. We're throwing this exception. The code is 404, but it is returning a 200 OK. Oh, I know why. What we need to do is actually return the header of 404. That's what we need to do. Bear with me just a second. Okay, cool. Let me just grab some tea. Hopefully it's not going to be as cold as yesterday. Oh, it's very much getting there. So we need to do a try catch. Where are we? In here. In there. We need to do a try. Try that and catch this. And we're going to need to use the exception. Apparently, import is not necessary. Okay, fine. We're going to do if exception get code 123 is 404, then what we're going to do is we're going to, and we should also do that in there too. we should do a header location, if I can spell it, and that needs to go to a 404. So we need to set that to do that. So error document, blah, 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 blah. Just having a quick gander on the old intrawebs as to the best way to actually do this. Yeah. Ugh. There we go. I'm just going to grab that page. So here we go. This is what we need. Header, HTTP 404 not found. So that's the header, and we also need to put in an exit as well, just to clarify that. So if that is a 404, then we throw a 404. It's not the most tidiest thing in the world, but we'll try that at least. Let's run this and see if any of this actually works. It does. So we now have all of the acceptance tests running. We also have all of the unit tests running, which means that I can just take out the test suite that I want to run. I can run all of them and they will all pass. We've got 39 tests now, and that is awesome. Which means that if we went to the browser, because it's always good to eyeball these things, just because your tests work doesn't mean that your code works. Let's go back to the browser. Refresh the page. That should take us to this page here, which is blank, which is a 404. Now, what I could do is create my own 404 page, custom 404 page, which I will do at some point. We might do that in the next stream. It's just we're coming on to the end part of this stream now. But if I went to there, we've got the home page. If I go to invoice 1, 2, 3, we have this one here, which is awesome. Let's go and play with a couple of things. Let's move away from the old PHP for now and move into some good old HTML. So what we need to do, what I want to do is just create a little navigation, just a little quick one. We go to app. No, we don't. Public. We go to views. We go to home page here. We're including the base template, which is in templates base. That also includes the primary nav, so we're going to grab this. Okay, so we have home. We also have invoice, so we can do invoices. Yeah. So this is invoice. And we're also going to create another one. Let's do, so that's fine. Okay, let's leave that for now. Oh, sorry, you're not even seeing this. So what I'm doing is I'm creating the invoices in the primary menu. Sorry, I apologize. I didn't hit the button at the right time. So where we've got, if I go back to the browser and I'll just show you where we've got this thing here, this is the primary navigation. If I did a refresh, we should have invoices. And both of these pages should actually work. Ooh, that didn't work, did it? That's me getting cocky. So invoices, why is invoices not working? Do we even have a route for invoices? Or invoice? No, we don't. That's why. So that's what we need. We need to put in a route. So this is just invoice. Invoice type, we're going to do index. Fine. Okay, that's fine. We'll just set all these to index for now. That's no problem. We're not worried about the internals of what's going on here. Let's also just create an acceptance test to make sure that does actually do the thing that we want it to do. So let's go to invoice. So that's the page not found. That's fine. That is all of this stuff. That's fine. We want to get to another one. I'll put it up here. We just want to throw this in. So this is invoice dashboard, maybe. I don't know. Should we call it an invoice list? Okay. I think this should be no. We're going too ahead. The test response for the invoice page, for the invoice list page. Okay, let's run those. We can run them all. And yep, we now have the 40th test. Woo! And you can see that it is starting to slow down. We're now at a second almost. And the reason why we are slowing down, if I was to do the units, so run unit, these are super quick, right? Boom, lightning quick, boom. But the acceptance themselves do take time. And the reason why that is, so if I did that, it's slow, you can see it chugging the way through. And if I do all of them together, you can see that they're actually getting... Well, that was under half. That was just over half a second. So, but acceptance tests take time. They do. And when I'm working on projects where we have thousands of these things, and they do take time. And there are a couple of things where we have to do these acceptance tests at night, overnight, in some cases, or at a certain scheduled point in the day, because they do take time. And they take time because you are actually running a web server. This is using the PHP. What are we using here for acceptance tests? Tests, acceptance. We're using the PHP browser. So it is actually running a browser, sort of in the code, the internal server. So it is really, it does take time, and it's one of those things, the more you have, the more time it takes. But unit tests should just go like that. They should just boom. So if your unit tests are taking time, then you've got problems with your unit tests, and you're probably not testing units of work. You're probably testing acceptance tests or integration tests or other functionality like that. So this is looking awesome. I'm really, really chuffed with this. Let's see, what have we done? Yeah. So we go back to the browser here. We can go home page, and we can go invoice, home, invoice, home, invoices, home, invoices. Woo! And then in here we can then start, listing the invoices out. On home page, I want to have a little spiel of what this does. On invoices, I want to have a list of all the invoices. I also want to have a little add button so you can actually add an invoice. As well. So all of these things we're going to build out, and I'm really, really, really happy with the way that this is going and working, and I'm pretty chuffed actually. I'm pretty chuffed with the way that this project is starting to pan out. It's not the best. It's certainly not going to be production ready at a long stretch, but it will definitely show the mechanisms of building an object-oriented project in PHP. There's all sorts of things that I've already built that I can start to parcel up into little tutorials, which is all what I'm going to do for the FreeCodeCamp stuff. So, for example, if I go back to the code here, what I could do is I could talk about how the kernel all hangs together. So, in the kernel here, this is actually calling a whole series of things. This is a very good example, I feel, of how you can get classes all hanging together. We can talk about dependency injection. We can talk about static here. We can talk about all kinds of things. In here, we can talk about encapsulation and polymorphism. When we're setting the validators and then running validate here, what we're doing is we're looping through each one of these validate routines, and we're calling is valid off of that. So if I go into validate here, we're looping through each one of these validators, and we're calling is valid, and we know that there is an is valid method because we've got an interface. So this is defining the contract between the classes. So we know that validators that have the interface of validator have the is valid, because that is the contractual agreement between these classes. So, you know, there is a lot of maneuver here in terms of talking about object orientation and teaching. But I'm really super happy with the way that this code is sort of slowly making its way. There's a lot of crusty areas that I need to sort of fix and solve and so forth. And I do appreciate that this is a very different way of doing the content, because it's very slapdash. It's extremely sort of like coming up with problems and solutions on the fly. But yeah, this is all good. Tomorrow we have a podcast, so do check that out. That's howtocodewell.fm. So do check that podcast out, and all the other podcasts as well. We're on season 2. We're interviewing all sorts of wonderful and great people to do with the industry, developers themselves, hiring managers, team leaders, people who are creating awesome projects, and also people who teach coders as well. So do check that out. That's some really super interesting guests have been on. But I need to shoot. I need to do all sorts of various things before I actually start work in a few minutes. So I do need to shoot off. But happy coding, everyone. Thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, do let me know. I do appreciate it. I do read all the questions. I'm planning to do a live, maybe not live, I'm planning to do an Ask Me Anything type thing when I get to perhaps 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, which by the looks of it might not be too far away. So that is awesome. So thank you ever so much for subscribing to the How to Code Well YouTube channel as well. Anyway, I must dash. Happy coding, everyone. See you again soon. Cheers. Bye.